But it's 7 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get started.
Stacy, can you shut or have it shut but left unlocked?
Great. Got it.
You let someone in, yeah.
Yeah. Depends on your perspective.
Great. Hey, so I'm sure we'll be having the names of who's here written down. In terms of last month's meeting minutes, I did not see any needed corrections. So any other corrections you want to talk about? Okay. Then I vote to approve them. I move to approve them, I should say. Second. Great. All in favor? Okay. So those go through. And if you don't mind if I borrow your pen.
No.
Thanks. I did not have one. Thanks, Tracy.
Takes good care of us, doesn't she?
I've been speaking misted today, so I'm going to try very hard to continue to be cogent and clear. But it might slip. Great, and it looks like we do not have any members of the public invited to be heard. So we'll move on to the next one. And our first order of business is our library staff presentation, and we have adult services representative here.
So I'll introduce you to Penny Burris, who is our department head for adult services. Serves pretty much all of the upstairs and helps out a lot in the computer lab as well. She and her team supporting the computer lab staff. So that's my small introduction for you.
All right, thank you. I'll just be really casual, so if you have any questions as I go along, please go ahead and ask them along the way. So Kevin said, my name is Penny, and I'm the head of adult services. I've been here for about 8 years. My joke is like nobody leaves Longmont unless they retire. So it's like 8 years is actually a fairly short 10 years among staff. And I'll just kind of give you an idea of like what me and the team does. We refer to ourselves as adult services, but we kind of interchangeably use the word reference services too, or information services. So I feel like reference services is kind of a old-fashioned term. But we still do the old-fashioned like reference services, and that is the main focus of our teamwork there is to be up on the second floor at that desk, that big desk, that first desk when we greet people up there, and are helping folks out there. We always have 2 people. Occasionally we have 3 people that work on that desk, but we always have 2 people available. And yeah, we're still doing kind of like the old-fashioned reference, helping people with their genealogy, adults doing genealogy, or doing research, the high school kids who are coming in who are doing a project on, the rainforest, or, the teacher, maybe doing some research for a class that they're going to be presenting and that kind of thing. So all that sort of type of thing. We help people find library resources. Sometimes it's just the old-fashioned helping them find a print book or a movie, but it's also helping them navigate like the digital resources that we provide. We do a lot of help with people doing ebooks. We have a service called Libby, and so we have a lot of folks who are like, hey, I've heard I could get free ebooks, maybe they've been paying for, ebooks through Amazon or another service, or, through Audible or something like that, and somebody's like, how are you paying? Like, let's go to the library and get get your books for free. So they come to us from a number of ways. After Christmas is our big time with ebooks, because I got this ebook reader, I got this tablet for Christmas, and can you help me, get it set up so that I can use your books? And we also do a lot of readers advisory. Can you help me find a good book? Or, sometimes people are just that general. And sometimes they're like, I've been reading this really specific type of, science fiction, and sometimes they come up with terms that I'm like, after all these years of working in libraries, I still don't know. But, so they want help finding like the next in the series, or I've read all of the books by this author, and I really enjoy this style of book. Like, what more can, what type of book can you help me find, that type of thing. So, I guess I'll backtrack a little bit about our team. There are 13 of us total, myself, and then there's 8 folks that work that are regular staff according to the city. Those are the folks that work 30 to 40 hours. And then we also have 4 what we call part-time non-benefited staff. And those 4 folks their sole duties is to work on the desk and or to like do desk duties while they're on the desk. And they work about 12 hours a week. The rest of the staff kind of rotates out of the working on the desk and then are also in the back area. Working on all the other different things that we work on, which I'll get into here in a moment. But I brought that up just because because Reader's Advisory, it's really kind of funny how, like, sometimes you just find the right reader, like, they'll come up to me and be like, I read this historical fiction that I was, like, really loved. Like, do you have anything else? And I'm like, let me, and I'm like, we have a moment, and then I'm like running all over the fiction area, and then the other, and then sometimes they'll be like, so I've read all these mystery books, but and I'll be like, okay, well, then I'm working on my skills as like a librarian, like how do I help Reader's Advisory when I don't actually read those types of books. But it works out really well because we have such a diverse team that like 90% of the time the person I'm working on the desk with is like, they'll perk up and be like, oh, well, let me show you, So you'll often find somebody up at the desk who kind of is a good match to the type of books that you read. But again, we really work on our skills to help folks when they're asking for books that perhaps aren't our cup of tea, not our personal read, but that are ways that we can kind of like search and find read-alikes for them and find a list and create a list. We also have a service where people can just send an email and say, I like these kind of books, and I like these kind of authors, I don't like this, and then we respond to those emails too. All right, so going back to like the kind of things we do when we're not on the desk, when we're not working at the reference desk, we manage all the collections up there, and the second floor is huge. And the adult fiction collection is the largest and most used collection in the library. We do have one librarian specifically whose job it is to manage the fiction collection. In addition, we buy all the ebooks, all the adult ebooks. We do have a select that buys the children's, but the majority of the money and the collection there are ebooks. And we do have a consortium that we work with, and that's the Front Range Digital Library. So we work with a number of libraries to build that collection, and everybody is required to put in so much money. Like we all agree that we'll put in at least this much. We probably agree to put in about $20,000 a year, and we usually spend about $100,000 on our living collection. We also are responsible for the magazines, the newspapers, and all the media. Media is a library for like DVDs and audiobooks on disc and music CDs. And then we also are responsible for all of our digital collections too. And when I say that, we're purchasing and we're also editing, reading, just kind of managing the collection in such a way that we're not overflowing. Our collection is somewhat fresh, somewhat like, we try to keep it useful. We do say we have a pretty deep collection here. Some libraries, especially public libraries, have gone to like a really more popular collection, whereas we've kind of kept a more traditional, what we call deep collection, which means like we may have several items on a subject versus like the 2 most popular, books on that subject. We do a lot of programming out of our team. We do the big, programs that you probably hear more about, the big author visits coming in, the lectures. We've done some film screenings. We don't have a film license here, so it's more like we did the documentary about Boulder. Like, this is not who we are.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. We did that. That was like something we were able to do outside of a film license because we were able to like contract directly with the folks who produced that film type of thing. That means we did that over the Civic Center because over here is not great for watching films, especially for adults. The kids can like sit on the floor and go, look up at the adults who like to sit in chairs. It's not a great place for that kind of thing. We also do a lot of meetups here. As I was coming down, I walked past the writers group meeting in our quiet study area up on the second floor. They're packed in there. Like there's 4 desks with like 6 chairs available for each desk, and then there's no room at all. And they meet every week. We do an Hablemos group, which is like practicing Spanish. We do our Say Hello, which is practicing English. So we get not just Spanish speakers, but we've gotten people who speak Korean and other languages. And those are just folks who want to practice their English in a really casual way. We do a creative night, which is kind of like an arts and crafts type thing. We do a chess group, which has grown so big that we've had to come down here to the first floor meeting room. We are doing a games night. We do a traditional book groups where folks can come in and actually discuss books here at the library. Those are really casual groups for folks to join. And we also partner with some outside groups. We do like a genealogy group where the Longmont Genealogy Society comes in and just we give them space to host. So we do some of that kind of thing too. And then we also run a lot of like kind of our special things out of our department too. Discovery Pass is something that our department does. We have somebody who is in charge of that. Runs kind of the back-end software and all the contract stuff. So we do contract with all of the groups that we provide passes for. Are you familiar? Some of you are shaking your head like you know what this is. Like the Discovery Pass allows our patrons to go around to different organizations, different museums, and around the metro area for the most part for free. There's a few exceptions, but we do have to contract with all of those. There's a few that we do provide the passes for free. There's other places where we have to pay them. And there's a lot of work on the back end of getting the software working and all that kind of stuff and making sure the passes are correct. Like they're closed for a day. We have to put that in because we don't want somebody to reserve a pass and go out a day that they're closed, that kind of thing. We do the library things out of our department. Folks do need to come up to our desk to check those items out. We don't circulate those out of regular circulation. Those are just kind of unusual objects that, we have a sewing machine, we have tools, we have
Radon detectors.
the radon detectors actually circulate right through which is we have like our library of things, which is kind of a separate collection, and then we also do unusual objects through our regular circulation too. It just kind of depends on how they were purchased. Okay. For the most part, library of things is completely funded by Friends. So they pay for the software and they pay for all the items in there. We have the telescopes. The Friends didn't buy the telescopes, so those are actually a long-serving thing that were donated many years ago before I started by astronomy group in here in Longmont. Tracy, I think she's been here longer than I, but yeah, they were donated. But when we started the library of things, we moved them over to the library of things. The nice thing about the library of things is folks can reserve something by calendar, so they can actually go in the software and just pick what date they want to pick it up. And with the telescopes, it's great because when something in space is going to happen because all of a sudden they're all reserved and they're all getting checked out. Like that big supermoon we had recently, they were all checked out over that week. So, and then other times, it's cloudy and it's coming and place them in the closet. We have a number of like yard games. Those are really, really popular over the summer. We've had a couple, like last summer I think we had, there's a place where people can write a comment, and we had like a lady who wrote, she was like, oh, this is for my wedding reception. This is so great. Thank you so much for having this collection. So with the telescopes, we've had like Girl Scout troops use them so they can get their astronomy badge. And the car, the thing you plug into a car diagnostic, like people will check that out, and it's very common, even though you get 7 days, it's very common for that to come back the next day, because you have people come in, they plug it in, they figure out what they need to do, and they bring it right back. But that's kind of a special collection that we run out of there. We have our experience bags, which is just a collection of materials that kind of relate to each other. So we call them destination bags or experience bags. Like we had a Downton Abbey bag, we've had like a Italy bag, that kind of thing. So that's kind of all things if you want to like sort of travel or just kind of immerse yourself for like a weekend or something like that. And Stranger Things or other popular type things. We also a few years ago got a grant to do well-being bags, which are also about like mental health and stuff like that. So either your own or if you're working with somebody who is struggling with their mental health, those kind of bags. And memory bags too, also for folks who are working with folks who maybe have experiencing memory loss. With our success from the Library of Things, we've tried to like board game collection. So that's also up on the second floor. We do kids games up there too, though, but we have them all up there. Random fact, we figured, we were like, how are we going to circulate these and make sure all the pieces come back? Because a lot of those, we weigh them. We have a little food scale and we weigh them. Because you were wondering how we do that. We got a puzzle exchange upstairs. So that's just a free 1-for-1. Like there's, people bring those ones in that they've completed, and then they can just take one. So there's no checking out of all. We don't guarantee that those pieces. We don't weigh those. And the other big project that we run out of our department is Homebound. So that's a program where folks who cannot make it to the library and don't have anybody who can come to the library regularly for them, we send them up for a service. We've got one staff person who runs the program, and this is part of her job. And she also works with a small army of volunteers, and the volunteers are the ones who actually take the materials and drive them and drop them off at our home patrons' residence, and then they also pick them up. So, and there's a kind of a mix. Like we do have a couple volunteers who are also selectors, so they can walk around and like choose items for a person, or like a lot of our folks that are in this program now are very digitally savvy, and they've got their own, computers and stuff, and they place their own holds, and then the holds just get routed up to the homebound services, and we put them in boxes for them. So, so that's kind of our main thing. I brought handouts and I completely forgot to pass it around. I brought a couple of each of these. These are marketing person Heidi put these together. I worked with her to get the what we I felt like are kind of the highlights of adult services. And you can see on here the discovery process. We talk about computers and printers, which probably if somebody from the computer lab has come or will come, we'll talk more about that. Our library things. Study rooms too. We have 2 study rooms upstairs. Very popular. Books back to back most afternoons. It's not going to do that. We have our, like I said, we have our digital library, which the big thing there is our Libby service, which is how you can read and listen to books. But in addition, we have e-magazines, e-newspapers, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post are all available. Consumer Reports is a really popular one. We have some learned language digital resources, Ancestry, we have Ancestry.com and Heritage Quest. And then a whole bunch of kind of searching for articles and that type of thing. So if you're doing some sort of research project, like the high school student who's looking for, project on the Amazon forest, that kind of thing. That's what goes there. You know, or just finding articles in general. You know, my doctor told me I have. Yeah, books can be kind of slow to process. By the time a book gets, you know, edited and published and all that stuff, you're looking at information that's, you know, 6 months out of date. Whereas an article could, you know, have been published yesterday. So with kind of the latest research, and then this just kind of more of our research and learn, and then a list of like our games, which is just recently expanded because the friends gave us more money to add more money to that grant. So cool. And then we've got the same thing, a similar in Spanish too. That's also a big part of our. And since I've been here, in probably the past 3 or 4 years, it's just making sure everything is available to our Spanish speaker community too. Okay, I wrote. That's it.
Do you have your card on you by any chance? Or your email address?
I can give you my email. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
It's Penny, Pennie, Burris, Burris,
Burris.
and then at Longmont, Colorado.
I work at Longmont Meals on Wheels, so I just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything that we're missing that we should be communicating to our clients.
Oh, okay, excellent, yeah. So, yeah, if you give me and I can get you in touch with Devin, who's
Yes.
coordinator.
Yes, she and I have been in contact recently. And she says she's looking for more volunteers right now, but I just wondered about anything else if you wanted us to share with older adults, we would be happy to.
Okay, great. Touch base with you on that.
So you all have so many wonderful programs and collections. I personally really appreciate the deep collection. There's things I find here that are hard to find elsewhere. What would be the top of your wish list?
I mentioned study rooms. I mean, they're booked back to back. Especially after the pandemic, we have a lot of folks who are doing online interviews or online classes or looking for alternative places, you know, where they could maybe do work from home or take classes from home. Right now, they're limited to 2 hours a day per group, so that can be pretty limiting to some of the folks for what they want study rooms for. In addition, I mean, we, you know, traditional study room uses too, you know, it's really common, you know, kind of ended in November, early December, and then again, like April, May, like, you know, the high school kids who have like 3 or 4 students who are want to work together on a project, you know, they've got to get their, so they'll reserve a room to work on that for a couple hours, that type of thing. But yeah, we're just, it's, you know, we have a staff module, and it's like, if it's green, it's open, if it's orange, it's booked, and you know, it's orange, it's always orange. So much orange. And then we also have to limit, like, we allow folks to do, you can make a reservation up to 7 days in advance. So, you know, sometimes people need more flexibility than that, but again, it's just the nature of just having 2 rooms and how much demand they are. And then just in meeting room too, because sometimes the groups are bigger. Those rooms accommodate 6 at the most, and that's very, you're making good friends with those folks. So, floor is comfortable. So maybe like a variety of spaces that we could offer folks that they could, you know, somewhere in between this like conference room and, you know, and the small study room would be great. So that they could, you know, more casually just kind of reserve. We're running out of space for library things. We can't really add anything big anymore. It's all in like a closet upstairs. Let's see here. Digital collections, we don't offer any kind of streaming services right now. There's a number of reasons for that. Cost, obviously, is prohibitive. And staffing too, you know, it just takes somebody in the back end managing those subscriptions and stuff like that. So, and then, you know, staffing, you know, libraries our size often have a business librarian, which we don't have. You know, like I said, our homebound services is like 1 person and that's just part of her job. Like, she's got other things she needs to do. So, and she is we're kind of at the max.
Yeah, she was afraid of us sending it out in newsletter format as opposed to just cherry picking folks that we knew needed it.
Yeah.
Because she said she's maxed out.
Yeah. And that's was a staff thing and a space thing too, you know. Devin is just space in her cubicle piling up back there. So we just need more space to be able to handle more, holding more holds and being able to transfer those materials, plus having additional staff to be able to get those materials or have somebody in the back end working with the volunteers and getting everybody on the schedule. When somebody applies, it takes just to bring them up to to start them, it takes about an hour of work to get them on the schedule, their likes and preferences and, all that stuff. So yeah, we have about 50, somewhere between 50 and 60 patrons we served right now through Homebound, and we're about maxed out, so. And then I mentioned like having money to have digital services and then staff that manage those digital services. Kind of just a little list. A few things.
It's good to know. It's good for us to know, I think, where the needs are.
Yeah.
Is there anything out there that still requires you to be in the library in person to access, or is everything accessible on the website now?
There are a few of our digital services that we can only get a contract with if it's in library use. Our grants guide, the color of the grants guide, you have to be in library. Ancestry is an in-house use only. That's because they want individuals to subscribe to Ancestry. There's the individual, and then there's the library version. And the same thing is also, there's an automotive one too.
It's here. Yeah, small engine and auto repair source.
That one is EBSCO, and you can access it anywhere, but there's another one that's, I'm drawing the
Oh, all data repair.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, that's because they don't want, the garages and the shops in the area to be able to use that for freighting. They want to make sure that it's just the individual who, is coming in and, I got to fix my car myself kind of situation. So there are a few that, to be able to offer them at all, we had to agree to, in-house use only.
Yeah.
So, and I'm in the process of, there's another genealogy called Family Search, and it's out of the LDS church. I'm in the process of working with them to bring us up as a partner library, and that will be in-house use too.
Very interesting.
And then you mentioned a couple language programs or translations, and I've heard of programs where if someone comes up and they speak a language maybe the staff doesn't speak, they can call a line and get a translation from the person. Or do you use any tools or apps, or does that not really come up?
The city actually, it's through the city, it's not just through the library. The city does have a service that we can use. We have little tablets, so especially if it's sign language, it provides video. But yeah, we do have a phone number, and we can use the tablet too. My experience with Spanish speakers though is, if we can get a Spanish-speaking staff person, we're probably a lot better off, because that person understands libraries and what we're trying to explain with lending things or sending up ebooks or that kind of thing. A translator is gonna translate it literally, whereas a library staff person who speaks Spanish is actually going to understand what you're trying to tell the person and being able to translate it in a way that actually isn't just the words.
Right.
It's the context.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I was my mom speaks English as a third language, and her first language, pretty much nobody speaks in America, so it's always no one can translate kind of thing ever.
Yeah.
So
I was talking to one of my team members, Edward. He does translations for this. He's a level 3, which means he can translate for the city and stuff like that. And he was like, "Yeah, because when I use the word circulation, circulation is such a library term, right?" But he's like,
Right.
what can, if you just typed in circulation to Google Translate, they're gonna talk about like circulation.
Yeah.
And like, this person is gonna be like, why are they talking about anatomy?
Yeah.
I'm trying to check out a book.
Yeah, totally.
So it's the Spanish speaking staff members are a better option here. But
Right,
it's
yeah.
sometimes we're in a pinch. And we have, I think there's only one person, maybe two people on staff who know ASL. So, but a lot of times we can get away with like notes and lip reading and that kind of thing. So with folks who have hearing issues.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
You mentioned working with high school students a couple of times. Are you mainly seeing St. Green students, or do you have a large homeschool group as well? Or
I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
I mean, it's good not to know.
Yeah.
You don't ask.
By the time they're high school students and they're up asking us for questions, it's. I think down here in the children's, they get to know the homeschool families because they're in the middle of the day and you've got the mom or the dad or they're like building curriculums and stuff like that. But by the time you get a high school student, they're just coming in and saying, hey, I'm doing a project, or hey, can we use the study room kind of situation. We're not building that kind of relationship we are that they probably have with the homeschool groups or homeschool families that they do down here. They're 16, 17 year olds, so they're doing their thing. They're driving themselves here, doing their own research. So.
Any other questions? I'm sure we could all keep going.
I'm curious, it's a short one. I'm curious, the text-to-librarian service, is that a popular one? And how is that managed on the back end?
It's not super popular.
It's not super
Yeah, we get
Email is more popular than text.
Yes, we have. We have both services. The text librarian is kind of a library wide, and we all are meant to log on. The idea is that whoever's like on a service desk would log on. So I would say the majority of text library questions are about people's pins. I'm trying to log on to Libby and I need my pin. I'm trying to log on to this and I need my pin. Whereas we do have we have Ask a Librarian email, which is monitored by reference staff. And if it's not a reference question, we will pass it along. If it's like more in the realm of like a children's, hey, can you help me find books for my kid, or sometimes there are questions about their accounts and that kind of stuff. We'll pass that along to circulation. But yeah, most of the Ask the Librarian questions are like reference in nature. So we're helping people with like their kind of research kind of things. Again, more information about how to access people's that kind of thing. Not just necessarily their pen, but like, hey, I got this tablet, and I heard you guys have free ebooks. How do I get on those kind of thing? And that we probably get one or two questions a day through the Ask a Librarian email, whereas the text librarian can really trickle in. Like sometimes we'll get like a couple of them in a day, and sometimes I won't see any for a couple of days. Maybe the rest of the library they're just answering them, so we are not seeing them. But I don't think we have like amazing stats on that.
Yeah, and on the back end, it's like a web platform. Basically, people log in and then it chimes, and then they can look and see what it is. So, and if it's a lot of certain questions, someone else can pick it up probably pretty quickly.
Yeah, we can see who's logged on. So if for some reason, we don't see a certain person logged on, we can like go, hey, we get some, get a certain type text library question or an account. Somebody's asking about an account situation. Can you respond? So, thank you. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. Yes. If you have any more questions.
Thank you, Penny.
Yep.
You're welcome, Catherine. Right, so you may notice that I didn't have anything about the board development from last week, and I think that's because we had a staff visit. So next time we don't have a staff visit, we can pick that conversation back up. Monthly icebreaker, this is gonna be a quick one. So I would love, if you have one, please feel free just to say no or pass. What book would you recommend right now? Any book, old favorite, new favorite, any age. One that comes to mind. And because this is my question, I've thought about it, so it's an advantage. I will go first. I would recommend reading Sweetgrass, if anyone's read that, by Robin Wall Kimmerer. That is a life-changing book. So, but I'm happy to talk more if anyone has any go on about that book. Anyone else want to recommend one?
I just finished Maggie Smith's You Can Make This Place Beautiful, and it was a gut punch. It was just, I don't know. I think it just resonated with me where I am in my life and all that. But she's a poet and author, and the book it's a memoir, but it's basically written in prose poetry. And I just kept thinking about that book after I finished it. Very cool.
Cloud Cuckoo Land. It's long. Yes, and it's so worth it. It actually reads very quickly, despite how long it is. It's the first book that my book club all loved and was still meaty. We've read some other ones that were just like breezy reads and like there's not much to say about it. This was the first one that we all adored and like we could have talked about it for 2 days straight.
Cool. Fiction.
I need more time to think about it.
We'll circle back.
Yeah, and circle back.
Catherine or
Yeah. More nonfiction, but I've been reading The Lives of Bees, and so it just talks about wealthy colonies and just kind of like all the things we don't know about a species that we really rely on. So
You're the second person to recommend that book to me in like the
Yeah.
last 2 weeks.
I'm
So
halfway through. Yeah,
I need to
it's
get it.
informative.
Okay, I have a tie. Is that okay?
Yeah, always.
Cheer.
There's so many. Well, I know. Find it as my favorite, one of my favorite books to teach and one of my favorite books to read. How about that?
That's fair.
Have you read Station 11?
Oh, that's
Yes.
so good. It's a great
So
audiobook too.
precious. I mean, the fact that she wrote it before the pandemic is just wild to me. And she just is really lovely. I feel like very uplifting dystopian novel, which is rare. And
Is that
then
your
I
favorite
also
to
love-
teach or read?
What was that?
Is that your favorite to teach or read?
Oh, I like to teach that one. I think
Okay.
it helped students process their pandemic experience. I just started teaching it this week again, and I was like, oh, I love this book. And then one of my favorite books that really challenged me was Americana by Chimamanda Adichie. It's just like a totally different take on the immigrant experience, and such a visionary person. I don't know. I just respect her so much. So it's long also, but really good.
Catherine, I have a read-alike to ask you about. Have you read The Library of Mount Char?
Mount Char?
C-H-A-R?
Okay, I will look at that, thank you.
I read that right after finishing Station 11, and it was interesting to read them. I won't give anything away, but it was an interesting pairing.
Let's see. And if not, that's fine.
Well, I'm thinking one that I finished this summer, Beneath Cool Waters, and actually the author, John Bassoff, is he was a colleague of mine at Loma Linda, and he's a teacher at Longmont High.
Oh, that's always fun when that happens.
Yes, and it's a psychological thriller. It was not my usual read, but it's a friend, so it's like I picked it up and read it. It's actually pretty good. But so yeah,
That's fun.
you're looking for something a little different.
Yeah, and a local author.
And the local author, yeah, he's gone around the nation and he's wrote a few other books as well. Just haven't had time to read them yet.
Tracy, anything from your mind?
I read a lot of kids' books, like picture books.
Oh,
I love picture books.
I know, that's what I kept going back to
Yes.
reading with the kids.
Too many.
Like, yeah. Charlotte's Web.
John, anything?
I'm not reading anything good right now. The only thing I've read of recent that I like is also local, Erica Krause, and we did an author event with her called Tell Me Everything. It's a nonfiction book about her work as a private investigator with a lawyer in Boulder who was investigating the early 2000s Boulder football team and a bunch of rampant sexual assault that was going on that led to changes in Title IX.
Yes.
And it was really good. And I, out of everything I'm reading, that's the only thing that's been different. And it reads like fiction.
What was the last name?
Krause.
Krause.
Krouse, Erica.
Okay.
All right, thanks everyone. I'd like to still continue this as it's mainly a new board still. Anyone want to volunteer for next month? I can. Great, thanks, Katie. Great. The next thing I wanted just to bring up on new business is a reminder of the Colorado Sunshine Law. And I wanted to do that for two reasons. Mainly because there once again a fair amount of new board members. And also because some of our email conversations have picked up, which I love, but I don't think we've, actually I know this because I've been watching for it, we have not breached anything, but I just want to make sure we're all reminded of this. And it's the Colorado law that any two or more members of something like city council, and that includes this board, that constitutes a meeting, conversation between two or more members, and that does include email as well. So we can email as a group about things such as meeting times or some pieces of logistical information like that, but unfortunately no substantive conversations between a full group. So, any questions or comments on that?
Just real quick, I think I've been on a different board where, like, before we had our first board meeting as a new member, they would have us like watch a video, or they kind of explain that, I guess, before going into it. So I get that like nothing has happened. I don't know if we should build that into our process, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
When I started here, the city did an orientation where that was very heavily emphasized. Was that?
I didn't go to that. Yeah.
Okay.
Right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was there one?
No. Yeah.
I think if there was one, I would have.
Yeah, it wasn't that I missed it. I just didn't. There was none. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Well, okay. So thanks so much. I thought I was just doing like a brief reminder, and
There's
I'm
a
going to find the language
right
for this.
Yeah.
So I'll bring in the exact language from the city, and then I think that's great feedback.
Yeah.
To
Even if
the
it's like
city.
something to read.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever. It looks
Yeah,
like.
perfect.
So, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
We'll add that to the agenda next time, and I'll bring in the exact language. But the gist of it is that anytime we are discussing library board matters between two or more, we have to have it posted publicly for something like 48 hours, I want to say. Okay. But I will bring that language in. Did you all have any board orientation training at all from the city before starting?
I met with John and
But not like one with the city lawyer that came in?
No one from the city contacted me. No.
Okay.
I thought they did, but did it
I
say?
mean, I'm learning too.
You're learning too. And I'm wondering if all that kind of was stopped because of COVID.
Yeah.
And then they just haven't picked it back up.
Yeah.
I know a lot of things were
Yeah,
on
would it go
hold.
over like Robert's Rules of Order?
Yes, like everything like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so okay, great to know.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm glad we got this at. Susie, is that information you think you could pass along, or John? I could as well.
I mean, I can email Sandy.
Okay. And then I can look back and see what, I believe I have the information for mine, so I can look back and we could bring in, maybe we could add some of those pieces to the agenda. Okay.
Great idea.
Cool. Okay, let's move on to old business. And John, do you want to explain the resolution that came for your packet? I can as well.
Yep. So, yeah, under the library ballot measure, you see review resolution, and that was in the packet if you happen to look at it. So, as you know, council did refer the library to the ballot, because technically that happened after the last time we met, like the next night. So that's why it's quote unquote old business, I guess. And since then, a few things are going on. One, the city is currently working on a brochure that will go out to all residents. That's a little bit more of a explaining the issues, not just the ballot language itself. And so I had some opportunity to give some feedback on there. With that, I think they're obviously on a quick deadline, so they're trying to get that to the printers so it can get out ideally either before or right around when actual ballots would come in your mail as well. So as a part of that, or I shouldn't say as a part of that, but around the same time, the city manager's office wrote up a resolution that you saw in your packet, which is, as is allowed from all boards and commissions, you're allowed to make a resolution to council in support, or I suppose not in support of a ballot initiative. And so what I included there was the language they wrote. I reviewed it. If there is some feedback, certainly I can bring it back, but I don't really know the timing of that. Just everything's obviously moving pretty fast, given that it was referred to the ballot by council, I mean, basically in the last moment that it could be. So, so that is what is there before you. As far as, and maybe Susie can add here, because I don't know what happens with this next. I mean, it goes to council. I don't know if the expectation is for a board member to come to council to officially, like during public invited to be heard, like this board has done before. I don't really know what happens with this resolution.
So there are a couple of things. I know that it could be brought up, so we can, I don't know if we necessarily vote to accept it. It can be shared, it can be emailed to us. It could be, if we wanted something more public, I believe it can be done during that 3-minute, and whether it's like a rolling, like
Right.
one speaker goes for 3 minutes, reads as much as they can, and then the next one, as much as they can, and then the next one.
Oh, fun.
So that is a strategy that we've often done when we go lobby or go to testify at the Capitol, or we have to speak. Or so that could be an option as well. So that is something that is made public. And then I can ask Dawn if there's something where it could be included into our packet, but I just don't know where it would be. Like, I don't know if that would be special reports and presentations, or
Yeah, right.
yeah,
Okay.
Since we already discussed the library. But I think it, to be able to have that be public, I think is something that would be really important for residents to see as well.
Great. So I have an addition I would like to see, but I'm also balancing the timeliness in my head. And Catherine, I see your hands raised, so I'm wondering if we're going to say something similar. I think we could say in the third whereas Longmont has surpassed 100,000 residents, and a feasibility study showed the need for additional library branch. I would love to see funding to bring us to a sustainable level of service. Whatever that phrase is that comes from the feasibility study, because it is more than just a branch.
Yeah.
But Catherine, did you want to add anything as well? Perfect. Okay, great. So, however, I
I pushed the wrong button and turned my camera off. Sorry. Yeah, my exact thought. I just would really like to see that preferred level of service in there, so people are held more accountable. Because additional is super big. It could be one extra down.
Is preferred level of service preferred to something more general, like expanded
Or sustainable.
service and operations, or
This comes back to,
maintenance?
right, this comes back to what we discussed last month, where preferred makes it sound like,
like, wait, what's preferred again?
how nice to be at your, like it's fancy. When we're talking about.
We're not talking about luxury here.
Right, we're not talking about
I
luxury
mean-
here. Yeah.
I think there's a way to demonstrate that it comes from the actual research. I see where you're coming from, but I also feel like we're saying this is grounded in the feasibility study that the city.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd leave that attribution and that it's from the feasibility study shows the need for an additional branch as well as additional support for ongoing operations.
So,
I think it's so vague if we don't use, there's a dollar amount attached to that terminology in the feasibility
True.
study.
True.
I think before we get into the nitty gritty, to back up a little bit, do we want to try, if we do have suggestions for this, does that need to go back then through you, John? We would not be able to vote on this tonight, is my understanding. So is that, I'm trying to figure out if it makes more sense for us to pass as is, be able to read it at the next city council meeting versus a little bit more time, because we would have to wait till our next meeting then to pass it. Is my understanding, but someone please jump in if that's incorrect. Yeah, Kevin.
I don't have a response to that, but I have a question for Susie, so I can wait
Okay.
if you want to, if anybody has something to say on that.
Well, I can jump in
Yeah.
on a couple of thoughts there. So one is, I mean, unless the board were to come up with the actual language tonight, then you don't have to come back if you're wanting to make edits.
Okay,
It can be captured in the minutes, and
Right.
then I can send it back on and request the change.
Right.
What I will say is, again, with the timing, I don't know where this is at.
Right.
The second thing I'll respond to as far as that preferred level. So when we spoke last month, and I was one of the ones that brought that up, was a little bit of a concern because at least as far as the brochure goes that's being developed, it doesn't reference the feasibility study, and therefore I was offering the opinion that saying preferred level out of context in that brochure may not make sense, and that's the way it's being written. It certainly is saying somehow in there to get it to a level of service that basically makes sense for a population of this size without using that word.
Yeah.
However, in the resolution here, I think if you refer back specifically to, as described in the whatever 220 blah 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 feasibility study, then in my opinion, it's within context. I don't think it hurts there to say preferred. This board has already done that a couple times to council about preferred level of service, and each time it's referred back to the feasibility study. It's only the brochure that I was talking about that doesn't. And that's where I was a little worried about that.
well, so it does sound like then we could amend the language, vote on the amended, that can go back, and then I think it would be, like you said, captured in the minutes. So this is where I get a little confused on the rules of order. My understanding is that we have to make a movement to amend, vote on that, and then work on the language, or am I taking this a step too far? I'm really
It won't hurt
confused.
to make that motion.
Right, it's true.
It's true.
Can I ask my question real quick?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Susie, since we talked about this last time, did you already go over this? Are we like beating a dead horse? Did you talk about this at council?
We talked about it on council. We already voted on putting it on the ballot, and we voted to keep them separate. I think the purpose of this resolution is to really show that the board supports. So it's more of a message to the public, I would think.
Yeah.
And that's okay
Right.
for the board to be as explicit as it
Yes.
is in that third, we resolve, like, we can tell
Yes.
people,
Yeah.
you should vote yes for this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Last week, we voted to bring forward a resolution in support of the ballot initiatives. So we as a council
We're
wrote a
inviting-
resolution.
Okay.
So this, I think, I'm viewing this as something that's more for the public. It's not really telling us as city council to vote on this or support it. It's to the public,
It says
vote
that
on
it
this,
has the
support this.
advisory
Yes,
board's
as the
endorsement.
advisory board, yes, yes.
Yep, and this is really one of the only places that we have.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
If we can do it, I like being direct.
I think especially because they're very specific about
Yeah, there's
next
that
light.
language.
I mean, it's very specific language in there about next light, so let's be super specific.
Which I thought, aren't there some city entities that don't run on next light?
I don't think anymore.
Okay,
So
I
the language.
yeah.
But preferred level's fine too. Additional funding to serve the operation and maintenance of all libraries in Longmont. So that's in there anyway, so that's good.
Yeah, so that is, but I think we need it, I would like it earlier as well.
In that third where.
That it is not only a branch, but there is more. That this board is in support of not only a branch, but in funding. So I think there's a few different ways. I can suggest some language, but if anyone else would like to. I would think, and I'm not going to make a motion to amend yet, that we would want to say, whereas Longmont has surpassed 100,000 residents and a feasibility study, I think we could name the feasibility study, but and a feasibility study showed the need for additional library branch, as well as, lost it. Sorry, I had this pulled up and I lost it. As well as for Longmont Public Library to be funded at the preferred level of service as put forth by the 2022 feasibility study. Does that addition, before you vote on it, capture, is it specific enough? Does it fit within the concerns that were just raised? Okay. Then I would like to move that we amend the resolution to read. And you said,
Julie, what was the line that you just showed?
So it's at the bottom under section 3 under the resolves.
Okay.
Additional funding to serve the operation and maintenance of the whole. See, I would actually flop those. I'm sorry to be a pain in the butt.
you would flop the whole sentence?
No. I would flop the phrasing. So in the whereas, right? The
Yeah.
whereas we're saying, all right, given this, given we
Yeah.
know this, it actually isn't given in the feasibility study that preferred level, that option 3 has to be the solution. There's a couple of different.
Yes,
things.
it's one of the.
It's one of the, right?
Yeah.
But what it does show, without a shadow of a doubt, is that it needs additional funding to serve the operation and maintenance of all libraries in Longmont. So I would wonder about taking that phrasing from section 3, throwing that up in the third whereas. You following me so far?
Yep.
And then in that section 3, we urge Longmont citizens to vote yes on the ballot issue approving a new library branch and for funding at the preferred level as recommended in the 2022 feasibility study.
I see what you're saying. I think that makes sense. I could go, I don't have a strong opinion on that. I think what you're saying
Because
makes
that
sense.
is where we say we want this specific level.
Yes.
We're saying the
Yes.
4 that were mentioned
Yeah.
in the feasibility study,
Yep.
this board backs that one.
Yeah, and I think that definitely makes sense. The only reason I like that is just I like it being earlier, but I think how the document reads what you're saying makes sense. Other comments on what Jamie just suggested?
It was a little muffled for me. Could you just read it again, please?
Which way should I aim my voice?
This way.
So Al, what I'm suggesting, it's just weird because your face is over there. What I'm suggesting is that you take the phrase in section 3, the operation and, additional funding to serve the operation and maintenance of all libraries in Longmont. Cut that and you paste it up in the third whereas, so it reads, the feasibility study showed the need for an additional library branch and additional funding to serve the operation, ... And then in that section 3, that's where you say, we urge Longmont citizens to vote yes, ... approving a new library branch and funding Longmont Library at the preferred level as recommended in the 2022 feasibility study.
I would just,
Okay, thank you. That's
can we make one small change instead of, because you made a really good point, instead of recommended, can you say, let's say outlined?
Outlined. Yes, outlined.
Yep.
I get the gist.
Yeah.
So wordsmith it
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
the page.
Totally.
The phrase additional funding to serve the operation and maintenance of all libraries is also in the 6th whereas.
I'm okay with that.
Mhm.
Already being repeated.
Me too.
Okay, so, Catherine, were you able to hear that one? Okay.
I think the preferred level in section 3, it feels a little bit more strategic too.
Yeah, and it's
because
right
if this
before.
is for the public.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. A lot of people just read the resolutions, they don't read the whereases. It's like, what are you doing? What are you saying?
Yeah.
You
Okay,
You're a library.
that's true. I move to amend the resolution using the language that was previously stated, which I can state again, but were you able to capture that?
Oh, nice job.
Way to go.
Yeah.
It was not easy to follow.
Great. And second.
Second, do you have a vote? Okay, so approved. Okay, so now we still have to vote on this because then we've just voted on approving the amendment. So now I move that the board adopts the resolution of the Longmont Library, adopts the resolution as put forth on 9/13/2023 as amended.
As amended. Second.
Is that a yay or a hand up? Yay, okay. Okay. Great, so we have now adopted this resolution. If you don't mind getting those edits, and then John, if you don't mind sending in
Yeah, I'll do it
our amended
tomorrow.
version.
Yep.
Great. I would love if one of us could read this out at public invited to be heard. When
And I
should
just
that be?
emailed Sandy, I CC'd you on it as
Okay.
well, to ask about orientation, as well as what would be the best format? Could it be something that's
Oh, great.
added to special reports
Okay.
and presentations? Or so I'll get clarification on that.
Thanks.
We can get you on the agenda, and we can do that.
Okay, great. And once again, this is kind of where I wish we could discuss more over email. When is the next city council tomorrow? When is it?
It's tomorrow, it probably wouldn't have been.
26th, is that another one?
That's the other one. So tomorrow is a study session.
Oh, okay.
And then should be the next one then, should be regular. Look. It's not on here.
So we've got October 3rd and October 10th.
Okay, if need be, I can read this on the 26th,
That's a regular session as well.
on the regular session. Okay, so based on what we hear back, I will tentatively plan, Jane, you're gonna join me if others do as well, to read on the 26th. All right, thank you all. Any other comments before we move on to our next agenda? Yes.
Where else would/could it go beyond being read at the city council meeting?
I mean, it
Or to
could,
the editor.
yeah, it could be shared, I was thinking to the news, because it's us just sharing the resolution.
Could it be posted online or linked to in social
Could
media
it be on the
posts?
library? I don't know.
I don't know if it can be on the library website,
Yeah,
Yes.
not the website, the Facebook page, no.
not the
I think-
libraries.
No.
What if the friends share
Other
it?
organizational.
So like
Yes.
the Friends of the
The
Library?
friends would share it.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, first of all, they're not understanding restrictions, so that's a great.
Would it be on the city's website as just a resolution? No.
I mean, it might be, I don't know if it would get in there buried in a packet, you know? That's what I don't know, which technically makes it public,
Yeah.
right? But then taking that, it
Could you
could
put
certainly
it
go
on-
elsewhere, I just don't know about library platforms.
Yeah.
This group has a page on which we're mentioned on the city
Yeah.
website. Could it be a link on that
I
page?
think that's getting back to the same concern though.
Yeah, it would be the minutes then. in
What's the
that page.
concern?
Well, I mean, it'd be the same concern of not posting using like the library social media, which I'm hearing would be a no-go.
Now, unless, how are you able to, is the general public able to access this packet on that website?
On the city's board pages.
Yeah,
Well, if it's
So
something
then
that's
if
going
it's
to be
already
read at a
on
council
there-
That it
meeting,
is, and that's public.
and like our minutes are shared
Yeah.
and our agendas
That's
are
what I'm
shared
trying to
online.
think of going that route.
That's where it would make the
Yeah.
most sense, because I
Yes.
understand the concern around library employees and the
Yes.
perception of that being
Yes.
a connection. But if we can overtly say we say this as a council,
Yep.
then anywhere where we have public documentation as a council should be okay.
Yep.
And then it lives there, and anybody who happens to see it from another organization or as a personal citizen and wants to make others aware that it lives there, then they live.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is how to get that there.
The person who posts our agendas and minutes.
I don't know as a library employee.
Oh, it is. a library.
well,
Yeah, it's-
well, you send it to the city clerk.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
so John would be able to answer that question.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yes.
then,
It's a city clerk question.
okay,
Can it, and if so,
Do you
how?
mean in here?
How, yes.
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
So the question is,
Even on
for the
the-
city clerk, can this resolution be posted publicly using the same platforms where we post other library
Prime Gov.
minutes?
Within the
Yeah.
Prime Gov,
Prime
platform,
Gov.
within
Yeah.
the board's Prime Gov space, whatever, I don't know
Yeah.
what you call it. You have your own space there.
Okay, so is
Am I
that,
able to see, okay, because when I guess I'm looking at Prime Gov as a live portal. So I'm just looking at something different. So this is the one that I have to log into.
Yeah,
So I,
makes sense.
okay, oh, so there, but when I click on the board meetings, there's nothing on there. There's nothing populated in there, so.
Well, but you're under September. Does that matter?
September?
Yeah, so if you go back to August, which is,
Um,
does that help you out?
no, I think it's still the same. Let me look at the advisory.
I have a follow-up question though.
Mhm.
If we can say yes as a library board, we urge you to vote on this, does that mean that individual board members of this advisory board can also advocate for this?
as a citizen,
As a citizen, but not.
not with us and
Speaking
or
as the board.
not speaking on behalf of the board?
So I can say vote yes if I am part of the board as a whole putting forth a resolution,
Yes.
but I can't say vote yes as an individual member of that same board.
You could say as a Longmont resident,
Yes,
I'm-
I'm just wondering.
and library,
Crystal
supporter of the
clear.
library, I
Yeah.
advocate.
And I
Gotcha.
believe if this is posted, you could also refer back to the
To the
library board.
link, yes, you
resolution.
can refer back to the link, so
As a
on your
private
own
citizen.
social media,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can say, hey, this is.
Okay, so is this a question best asked to the city clerk's office for me, or is this one that you all would be able to ask as well?
Yeah, I can reach out to Dawn.
Great, great, thank you. Thanks, Jamie, those are good points. Okay, other comments on this agenda item? Great, then let's move on to reports. And John, I'll just pass it to you.
Yep, okay, so I have a few things to go through. Try to be as quick as I can. So I'll start with wow.
Uh-oh.
Okay, I'm trying to share because Catherine's on here. Okay, so I want to go through a couple things. So you see this, Catherine? Okay. Our action plan. So just to talk to a couple things. I may not try to scroll through here and expand just because it's obvious I can't talk and use my computer at the same time. But under some of these sections, so patron staff and security, I circled back with facilities. One of the items that's left hanging there is the staff secure areas. They have to get a quote for the door, and apparently it was hard to understand what he was saying. It sounds like they got a quote at one point, but it's long expired. I certainly never saw that, so they have to kind of start that over again. So that was just followed up last week. Under internal communication, one of the items here is for library staff to make better use of SharePoint, which is, at this point, I can't say it's a new platform for city employees, but it's newish. And we're trying to just make better use of that for internal communications. And the update there is I had my tech, I can't remember Donald's position name, but he kind of oversees the computer lab and technology in the library. And he gave me a nice long update for that as far as what we've done since January with SharePoint in there. And there's a number of things. I didn't realize we had actually done a number of things there, but we try to post our own minutes in there and things like that and try to get staff to go there. Under external communication, oh, I forgot to bring this, but no, I do have it. There's a couple things. One is, and I think the board saw this, on the website, we have a separate section now for policies. This has been a twofold goal. One was just to have more of our public-facing policies on the website. As we develop them, they're there. So now the website, under About Us, has policies, and it's its own section with everything in there. The newest policy being the meeting room policy, the meeting rooms next door to us, which as of today are now open to the public. That's also one of the action plan goals, is to open that to the public. So definitely a shout out to Tracy, who did a lot of the work in kind of tightening up the policy there, somewhat based off this room that we're in, which has been open to the public for a while. But we had to consider a lot of other things for the meeting rooms. One, there's a kitchen, there's technology available for the public to use, tables and chairs, different room setups. So there was a lot to think through there. So, so that policy is there, of course, but also just I wanted to let you know the meeting rooms itself are open after a few years of not being open. And then another policy that is currently waiting on legal review is, and it's one of the ones we needed to write here that we didn't have, which is a basic computer use policy, because we have public computers and we check out laptops and other things. We didn't have a computer use policy, so we worked on a draft of that and got it finalized and sent to legal. Of course, I'll bring that to the board here to review once legal has a chance to review it, and then if there's anything from this board, I can always go back. But that's where that stands now. To have that, and then another. Well, let's see. That's action plan stuff. Actually, that covers what I wanted to talk here about. Okay, so other updates. We wrote an internal policy. Actually, this was written a little while ago, long enough ago, I don't actually know. Pass this around and take a copy if you want. This is an internal policy for staff, just so you know, so you won't find this on the website. It's a privacy policy. that I think was in draft mode when I started, so that's how long back it goes. And really what this is, it's based off Colorado state statute of patron privacy and privacy of user records, which those of us in library land are quite familiar with. And some of you hopefully have gotten a little education from me on that if you're new to the board. But this policy is based off of that, but with clear steps on what staff need to do, in particular as it relates to Longmont City Police law enforcement. And in state statute, without trying to go into a whole lot of detail here, it does state in there that, you know, the basics of patron privacy is we don't share records and stuff without subpoena or whatever, but there is a clause that says unless otherwise required by law. What the city did is they took that to say, well, there's times we need to help the police under certain circumstances, which would only be under exigent circumstances. And you'll see that in the policy there. So we just finished some trainings with staff on this to help them understand what that means. This type of circumstance came up not that long ago. And unfortunately, we hadn't done the training for staff yet. We had a situation where police came in wanting to either tell us some footage from our cameras or look at it themselves, which under normal state statute we wouldn't allow, but it was an exigent circumstance in the sense that there was a missing child. And staff didn't know, so they held by state statute instead of going by this policy. And I'm not trying to call it staff, we hadn't done the training. And helping them with whatever we could in order to help them under that only under that exigent circumstance. I want to be clear, it has to be an emergency. Police were trained on this exact same policy. They know the terminology to use. In the trainings, we did 4 different trainings basically in order to get every staff involved. And there wasn't one training where someone didn't ask me, well, couldn't just a police always say it's exigent? Sure, but it's not in their best interest to do that.
Sure.
And they actually can get in big trouble. So I don't expect anyone to abuse that just in order for them to get their way. But we have to be willing to help police in a situation that really requires it. The burden isn't necessarily on all staff, just so you know. That's really the burden's on me or someone that I would designate, which would be a supervisor or someone else who's a lead on staff. They should still try and call me if I'm not here. So I just wanted to share that policy with you so you know where we stand. Long before me and before this policy, something else that's declared in this policy that wasn't clear to staff was, well, what if the library calls the police because there's criminal activity going on? There was a time where that happened here. We called the police for criminal activity. The person that was here, whatever was going on, had left. The police come to help, ask where the person was, only for staff to say, oh, well, privacy laws don't allow me to tell you that. But you just called me. So there was a disconnect there between, you know, understanding Colorado library law and also knowing how to react to different situations. So anyway, you can always entertain questions or things like that from you if you want. But I wanted to pass that along.
Thanks, John. I do have a question if you wouldn't mind saying a little bit more. Under Section 3, Part C, it looks like when the library is required to contact law enforcement, this is just one year to what you're talking about. The library director designee may provide full information, video records. How do you consider reasonable precautions that can be taken to adequately protect the privacy of other patrons?
So in that situation, so the example we used with staff in that type of situation, particularly if police are involved, right, is first of all, there's only, I think, less than 4 people on staff that know how to use the security camera system software. So it's not like every staff can just hop on and say, here's the cameras. The police don't know how to use it either.
Okay.
So the reason I'm prefacing that is what the security team would do, because they know how to manipulate the cameras, is police come in, they're looking for somebody, the security person will look, they might identify that that person's up on the 2nd floor in this area, they're going to turn off all of their views except for there.
Okay.
Now, can someone else walk into the picture? Sure.
Yeah.
And the police see that. That person that walks in, the police might say, oh, I know that guy, we have a warrant out for his arrest. Well, the burden's on the police at that point, not on staff. So that's a reasonable precaution.
Okay. That makes sense. Any other questions for John on this at this point? Thank you for sharing this with us. I think it's really important that we have this.
Yeah, and actually, it probably should have, go ahead, was your hand up and down?
Oh, sorry, yeah. I mean, this is probably a stupid question, but the police are the only people who could ask for this information, right? There's no other
Correct.
group or entity.
Well, anyone can ask. I mean, anyone can ask.
Could be granted in
Yeah.
many circumstances.
Correct, yeah, and it's in the policy too, and I'm sorry, I didn't put this in the packet on purpose just because it's not public information, but it's in the policy about the public asking for cameras, and at that point, any of that request would be put towards me, and I would probably right away, I mean, depending what it is, but most likely what I would do is I would be going to the city clerk and consider that an open records request and let it go through that process and let that be the decision maker of whether that view is open up or not.
For the legal responsibility, is that the individual or the library as an entity? This last thing.
It's the individual. So she's asking, there's a statement in there about legal responsibility of library staff and volunteers. And basically, it's the part in here that says if we violate this policy, a staff can be fined. And the reason I'm chucking a little bit is because if library staff were to break Colorado state statute law, it's considered a petty crime. And do you know who would charge that staff person for that crime? Longmont Police.
Yeah.
And Longmont Police are not going to charge library staff
Right.
for helping them, basically. And I pretty much have that guarantee from the city attorney's office. Even so, it's $300. So, I'm not trying to encourage anyone.
Right.
You know, we have to follow this. That's why it's there.
Well, and so far, everybody has erred on the side of too much privacy. So yeah, clearly, it's clearly
yeah,
it's going this way.
I mean, it's a real thing, and we as library professionals take great pride in it. I think I always say we're one of the last institutions that values privacy on that level, whereas everyone else is happily giving your data away. As we speak.
Yeah.
So, I'm very proud of that, but there are times where we have to, and let's remember too, the city police are our colleagues, right? They're not working against us. So, we have to have reasonable measures to allow us to help in an emergency.
Yep.
So,
Well, thanks, John. As you just mentioned, privacy is such a bedrock value of librarianship and libraries, so it's great to do this.
Okay, so I'll move along from that topic, if that's okay, and I'll go to some of the programming highlights. I realized last month I forgot to do this, by the way. But I didn't combine them either, because I didn't want it to be long. But July was a great month. We did a lot of stuff. Now we're on to August. Because when I was building, I'm like, well, I never showed this at the meeting. Anyway, so here is August. So this will be your first experience with this. But I like to, it's not to show every single thing we did in the month, but I like to show highlights of what we've done. And
it was still in your packet last month.
it was in the
Yes,
packet, so
yeah.
you could have looked at it, that's for sure. The other thing, I think, Sorry, there's noise. This also, on occasion, gets shared with the Friends of the Library Board, not only because they would like to see, but also because, as you all know, they 100% fund all our programs and events. 100%. So here's some children's programs for the month. I'll just kind of go through a little bit so you can look at some of the cute pictures and read some of the captions here. Our tween, if you know tween ages, some of you. Anyway, that's a growing population here. They're getting more and more engaged with the library. Oh, this was a good program, yeah. Another teen program. And then just some data from children's, kind of a boring slide, but it just shows you some of what we've done. So in August, we're 1,600 attendees in total for children's programs, which is pretty good. That's total attendees, by the way, so parents included, or guardians, whoever is there with the child. The children's department does do outreach as well in the form of class visits, classroom visits, whereas our outreach department does more of the outreach events and special events. That you're out, and that'll probably be the next person entering here at some point, by the way. You heard Penny talk a little bit, so she had a few things. We did this make earrings night, which was pretty fun, I think. We did bring in an author. I wasn't able to go to that, so I'm not sure that was, but I think the turnout was pretty good. And then other things, like she mentioned the chess night we have to do down here now because it's so popular. I realized that I found this by accident, if any of you are familiar with their used Meetup. But there's a group there, a Longmont Library group, so they indirectly help promote this stuff because they're getting people together to come to these things. So I think that's helping in part. And then other programs here totaled up. Very quick glance. It's in the packet, so I know you can go through these a little more. And then outreach, a lot of stuff. This is a busy time of year for outreach. This is Lillian, who, when she's out, people ask her or they stop in. So a lot of her outreach is in here because she gets families in, primarily Spanish-speaking families, and so she'll impromptu give them tours.
Nice.
And they love it. They just love it. She goes out to the Hour Center. When she says 68 stats, she interacted with 68 people. This is a regular program at one of our parks. I think at park, I can't remember which one. Or
All the kids
Collier.
Yes, thank you. All the kids call it the train park.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I can never think of what it's actually called.
So she goes there, I think, once a month, maybe more. She went to the Latino Chamber of Commerce, which was that was a special invitation they gave her to come there. There's Lanyon Park, which is another regular visit that we do. She always provides great photos, which I love. Intercambios come a few times. They come here. She gives tours to that group. This was the last concert they did out here, which was the makeup concert for the June rainout. So I joined in on that one. That was a really fun night, nice night out too. Just a really nice night, and a really, really good turnout for us. Back to school night. So she'll do these back to school nights, and obviously interacts with a lot of people during those. Oh, that's the place. That's right.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. Close.
Yeah, it's really close. Another back to school night.
That's my school.
Is that yours?
Yeah.
She was there.
I know. It was great.
And then I've been talking with Lillian a little bit too about outreach and trying to get it out a little more north in town that she has. Just in general, we need to be there. We know that's what we hear, even when it comes to a ballot initiative, when people ask, where's it gonna be? And if I don't say north, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, we need one north. It's like, that would also happen. But, so she's trying to get out there and talk to the north end of town a little bit more. And then all the different stuff she did here in August. Quite busy. And then you'll see more in September, because of course she was at Rhythm this weekend and a bunch of other stuff. And then this is just all the various things and people that helped. And there we go. So I know I moved through that fast. But.
Well, it's great to see y'all at Roosevelt this weekend.
Let's see. Maybe I can stop my share now. Somewhere. Thank you. Gosh. It's because we use Teams here.
Oh, yeah.
So then,
okay, yeah.
for some reason, when it's like going from a Mac to a, anyway, I'm clumsy. So a couple other things in my report. It is Library Card Sign-Up Month. If you didn't know, we're doing some promotional things here. One is because we have the new library card that has the nice photo and the keychain thing. The month of September, you can exchange your card if you still have one.
I didn't know.
And not be charged for it.
Woo!
So, you should do that if you want a fancy new card. Yeah, and for people who are new members of the library, they can opt to register for a prize. We'll be getting some nice, canvas bags that says "I love my library," Longmont Library, to give away for new members. So you can't get that on an exchange. Sorry. So there's that. That should be getting out on our website and social too pretty soon. And I think, the last thing I don't know, it's kind of a potential topic for discussion, but I think a couple things came up in email with a couple of you here with, it was from Douglas County Library, and facing some book banning, people. And the good news of that is their board of trustees had a final vote that everything that was being challenged is to remain on the shelves and on display, which is great. The one thing I thought was interesting that you might want to look up, and we could talk about this or at a future meeting, but I don't know that it's in response to this or something that they've been developing as a library, but they came up with a children's card. Now everybody has a children's card, but this one, at the parent or legal guardian's discretion, can opt to limit what can be checked out on the card. And I think this is very interesting, and I certainly have thoughts about that. I think, basically, in doing so, it might sound nice. That way, the kid comes up if they're in the library alone, and they bring up an R-rated movie, for example. The system will say, you can't check this out. My concern about that is that puts the burden on library staff and on libraries. And we are not responsible for kids in the library. We're not a public school.
Well, and an R-rated movie is probably an easy example because another entity has provided ratings and guidance. But
it's the other stuff.
It's the other
someone
things
decides
that then that's on the burden on the library, and I don't know how you would decide what's limiting and what's not according to whose philosophy of life.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's very different if it was these 3 book titles versus this type of content.
Yeah.
Because that becomes subjective.
I saw something similar where it was a young adult card, kind of like a junior, card for when you reach the upper teens, I guess, in relation to...
So just sections of the library you're allowed in based on age. That's also
but
easier.
some things were moved
Also
from
problematic.
a teen section or a youth services area to a young adult section that was upstairs with the rest of the adult library. But I don't know, it seemed to come out of the same places.
Yeah.
Send
Yeah.
our kids card.
I have questions about a lot of
Yeah.
those ideas. Currently, here, how does a children's card work? Is it just a regular library card? Is there like an under 13 parents need to sign, or under 15 or 16, and then they have access to the account? Or
Yeah, now you might have just stumped me on the age.
Right.
But there's a certain age where, whatever that, below that age, they cannot get a card by themselves. They
Yeah.
have to have a parent or guardian present.
I guarantee you, I guess.
Yep.
And it's their parent or guardian, because I tried to for my neighbor girl last week when I brought my daughter and the neighbor girl to DEAR. She had never been here and she wanted to check out books, and I was like, she has like a library card under her parents' name. I'm like, no, of course not. I was like, I figured. But I thought I would check. And so it went under my account, which we'll see how that goes. But yes, it has to be your own parent or guardian too.
Yes, someone who's with you, and what happens is they go into the kid's account, their name and that parent or guardian's information is put there. And it's really, the biggest reason for that is the financial burden. So if something happens, we don't do fines here, but if the book was lost or damaged, then that falls on whoever is on that account. There are some other things in there too, as far as it gets back into privacy. So in that case, the parent or guardian, if they have the card, the kid's card number, or can verify information about the child, then they can get access to their actual account. Meaning, what do they have checked out? But there's certain parameters with that. It's not just automatic.
And if I remember correctly, when my daughter got her library card, it was through a field trip to the library, and I think I had to sign a form beforehand. Yeah. Yeah. So even if it's done through field trip.
The newer thing we did here, I think it came up a number of meetings ago. It fell within our action plan to improve access for teens. So we basically, it's not like a teen card in the sense it's a different card, but in our system, we created a new teen, what we call a patron type. But it basically allows a teen who would be considered a minor and technically require that parent or guardian, but in their absence, they can still get a card. We give them a card, it's full access, they're just limited to 2 items to check out.
Right.
Until they can get that signature, because we don't want to block access.
So similar to many, I think Boulder, I don't know if we do here, I think Boulder Public does that, where if you don't have your proof of address,
Yes,
you can
we
still check
do
out
it for
2 books.
adults, basically.
Yeah.
So, and we expanded that to include teens, just so
Makes a
that,
lot of sense.
because so many come in here by themselves, obviously. Most of them do, they don't want to be with their parents.
Yeah.
Anybody has teens, you know that.
Yes.
So, anyway, I guess I could have brought that up under library professional news, but I had it under my notes that I wanted to bring up. You can look it up under Douglas County. Let me know what your thoughts are on what you kind of do. It's just very curious to me. So, and then the last thing I wanted to mention, if you're not familiar, some of you are, there's a really good nonprofit organization that does advocacy for libraries called Every Library. One word, Every Library. And they do tremendous advocacy for libraries, and a lot of it is also helping where they can with campaigns with libraries. And I reached out to them just to see, because I haven't really been through an election here, and they have experience everywhere, and they were actually pretty helpful with Boulder Public Library in their last election when they voted to become a district. They were helpful with them and just providing some things and do's and don'ts. They're very familiar with city employee and board member parameters on limitations of what we can do or not do. It was just very helpful to talk to them and learn about things we can do as a library or library staff to advocate for libraries without advocating for a certain vote. And I just wanted to share that. You can look up Every Library and kind of see what they do. I'm bringing them back in actually tomorrow to meet with my marketing person to get some.
Oh, nice.
I was going to actually, to get some kind of input on what maybe she can do or not do through our own social media. Just one of the examples I remember that I share, because some people are like, well, what do you mean by that? Well, we already use social media a lot, and it's generally to promote our own programs and events. And one of the examples is this, okay, so you have story time, great. And now what you want to do is tell the story of why do you have story time and why it's important. And then everything else you do, you're not saying anything about an election, you're just saying this is why we matter. And so just talking with them a little bit, and Jamie came to one of those meetings to help learn a little bit more with her involvement here, but also with the Friends. I thought it'd be good to have somebody on that side, not just library staff, to kind of hear some of that messaging. So anyway, I'm happy to talk more about that too. But it was pretty insightful, just given the limitations we have and the short time frame that anyone would have that might want to advocate, event.
You're someone to engage too, because of your background. Like, I didn't hear anything on that call. I really appreciated being in that space. I didn't hear anything that I didn't know from working in marketing.
Right.
So it was pretty like common sense stuff, not necessarily specific to
Right.
Government employees or board members, but
For sure.
it's the social media stuff.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you would be a good resource for us all to know about too.
No, thank you. Well, that's plenty for the director's update.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions or comments for John? Okay, let's move on. Any Friends updates?
Book sale starts Wednesday for members only. Suggested giving out a members only jacket, but they didn't. That was a joke.
Oh.
But they do order bags. We have nice paper shopping bags with a handle that will be branded with the Friends of the Library logo on them. And those will be the only bags that will count toward that $5 bag, sort of the last day of the sale, which is Saturday now. Those bags, you fill them up and they're $5 a bag. Improvement from the single Target plastic shopping bag, perhaps not as awesome as if we were able to get a fabric or reusable bag, but we're working on it. The other thing that's just really happening with the Friends is they are very motivated and supportive of this ballot initiative, and they keep asking me what they can do and what they can't do, and I've had a lot of conversations with them in the past month. Loved getting to talk to the folks at every library because it gave me more language and kind of like some backup. We had some communications with the Friends lawyer that they retain, and unfortunately that person was not a helpful resource for navigating what Friends members could or couldn't say as part of a 501c3 organization. However, librarians know a little Googling, a little research, and you can find what you need. And so it's pretty clear that the Friends can advocate just to keep things clean and easy. We want to keep a cap on what spending they do, so that they don't draw any attention as a nonprofit.
Yeah, because what is it, like 10%? Something
There's
like that?
no specific number, but case study suggests somewhere between 5 and 10%. It can't represent a substantial portion of your expenditures. But within that, you can do a lot, especially when we're talking about functioning on a municipal level rather than, you know, a nonprofit who is a national or state. Anyway, so what I agreed to help with is talking points and kind of, you know, I've put together and run cheap or free, basically awareness, like grassroots word of mouth marketing kind of campaigns for different things. And so I said I would help with that. They kept asking if, you know, if I was going to create a whole bunch of content for them, and I'm limited in what I can do as a volunteer. But I want to make sure that what I'm showing them is, you know, above board and in line with, you know, anything that we need to be aware of.
Some of the recent training I've had was that if you can arm your board with 2 concrete stats.
Oh, totally.
And then their own stories. So like the fact that the library was designed for 67,000, like make sure they have that number down pat. And like one other thing, and then their own stories.
I think that one of the issues is that they are hesitant to spend money toward this. Not because they are not generous, but because they are so, they want to be so careful.
Right.
And the second thing is that I don't know, there's so much enthusiasm, but I don't know about the level of availability of anyone, certainly on the board, or anyone that the board knows who's like, yeah, let's get this going. I'm gonna write a letter to the editor. I'm gonna, you know, call the TC line, and you know, it's the mobilization of those stats and that information. And so what I've been advising them, and we're probably going to talk about it a little bit more at their next meeting next week, is here are some stats and some talking points, right? But the most effective thing is for you to personalize it, right? How do these things resonate with you? What example from your own personal experience, what story could you tell to somebody, you know, here, there, in all these different spaces that people go, that makes it real, because that's what works, that's what stays with people, and that's what will motivate action, not hearing like a recitation of an elevator. It's like, what's your personalized elevator pitch? One question that they had that I cannot answer is that they keep coming back to wanting to do something physically outside of the library. Put up a table and answer questions.
They can do anything outside of the library.
Even if it's in front of the library.
Okay. Am I not right about that?
I think so. I mean, I've seen other.
I think you can be out there and
you
don't.
Be out there. You can't be in there, and you can't say you're
Right.
the library.
Yeah.
Right. They get, and they can't talk about, you know, vote yes.
Yes.
But they can.
But they can do an educational.
Yes.
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 So Jamie, are the Friends meetings open to members of the public? Because it sounds like they're interested in volunteers, perhaps.
So we have a list of 300 active members.
Okay.
And we have all of these people's email addresses. And one of the things that I suggested they could discuss is sending emails, either soliciting support from their member base or providing information, providing links to other resources that inform them around this ballot measure or inform them around the feasibility study or what the library really needs next. It's like they've got things just.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking that is because obviously as library board members, we could not perhaps assist, but if anyone was interested in volunteering on our own time,
Right.
would that be an avenue that would be open? Do you?
I don't.
They probably just have to be invited in by the board.
Yeah, I don't know that it's closed to the public.
it's not
I
really closed,
just
but they probably have to be
know that
invited in.
no one goes.
Okay.
Is there any help they want from us for the book sale? To go back to the book sale, sorry.
The last time I talked to Sharon, who's the president, she mentioned that there was someone who had signed up for a number of shifts who had to back out. And so there were very recently some shifts that they were looking to fill still. So if you have that email from them with a link to Sign Up Genius, it's probably worth checking one more time. If you don't and you would like that link, I can send, just let me know and I can send that to you.
Great. Thanks, Jamie. Anything else about friends or other comments? Okay, I'll leave us on. We're coming up to 9. So, Lee City Council, liaison.
So right now we are neck deep in budget. So every session we're hearing a little section of the budget and what's the projections and where moving forward on certain things. One of the things that I brought forward that I really want the something to be allocated towards is extra rangers at Lake McIntosh, or McIntosh Lake. Since COVID, people seem to have discovered that place. The way it's designed, it's not really, you can have an entrance for people to come in and pay to come in. Otherwise, just because there's that long stretch of land that, where people park their cars and it's right to the lake. It's not even driving into a driveway, like Union. So one of the things we're finding is people are drinking there. People are, taking out their boats, on and throwing them out on people's yards on Lakeshore Drive. I mean, it's just really, and a lot, it's, I've gone out there in my city council capacity and just kind of chatted with people. Hey, where are you from? And a lot of people that I talk to don't even live in Longmont. I mean, it's something that they've discovered and they come and hang out. But you're not supposed to drink in the park, period. Any park. It's so just having that presence. And I don't think it's fair to put that on the residents or other people who are there to say, hey, you can't be drinking. There's a party of 30 and they've already had a few beers in them. I'm like, that's not safe. So, as I'm hearing from residents or certain things that are coming, especially, for me, my focus is Ward 3. As I'm hearing these things, I'll sit down and I'll have a chat with Harold or other department folks and then just kind of bringing that forward as we're approaching the budget. Hey, how much would it cost for this particular component, even if it's not year-round, something that summer months and high, usage on weekends, that we just have somebody allocated for that space. So that's kind of, and other council members are doing the same as well. So that's kind of the things that we're looking at. We are also going to hear about the sugar factory. We're going to get a presentation, so it sounds like there's activity happening. The properties are getting sold, to developers so they can see this come to fruition. I don't know if I ever shared with you all, so 2 years ago, we were approached by Growing Up Boulder, and they're an organization that works with youth to get them engaged into projects. I believe that they worked with our 4th graders years ago on Appleturf Park redesign. So they actually got to play a role in redesigning that park that's right next to Indian Peaks. So I worked with the developers for the sugar factory, Growing Up Boulder, our planning and zoning department, Sandy, and they introduced a design challenge to our 3rd graders at the time. They got to redesign that space. So it was so cool to see it on our council communication, that photographs of our kids. I don't know, I can pass my laptop around, you all can see that. And so they redesigned that space. So there was an historical component of it. For the longest time, people were referring it to the sugar mill. And as my kids were studying this, they're like, well, one of the kids, a couple of them actually, were talking about the milling process. And just actually, you don't do that with sugar beets. So it shouldn't be called a mill. It should, it's just a factory. And then we were hearing from other residents who were chiming in. It was like, that's right. It's a factory. It's not a mill. It doesn't, it's erroneously named. If we're going to be caught up on history, we have to. So we've actually changed the name. So instead of the sugar mill, it's the sugar factory redesigned. So it's cool to see that our youth have played a role in that piece. So we're going to hear the updates and where we're going with the sugar mill, or sugar factory, I should say. And so that'll be expected tomorrow. Other things coming down the pike, we are going to be having a pre-session in October. I think this one is an executive session first, and then we're going to bring it out to the public. So we've had a lot of residents trouble with meth houses. And, some neighbors, there was one neighborhood that it was in December where the SWAT team came out and neighbors were notified. Well, they can't really push out because as they push out that information, the suspect, the perpetrator that they're trying to get could also get that. So it gives them it. So they have to kind of come in as a surprise. So it's like, okay, I understand that piece. But what is something we can do, even if it's at the policy level or something that we can do as far as public safety, working with individuals who have these homes and are using, what can we do? So we're going to kind of strategize and get into detail in the executive session, and because we'll be talking about certain individuals, and for privacy we have to have that executive session. But I do want this topic to be pushed out publicly as well, because this seems to be a growing problem, especially as we're looking at lack of housing, and now we have houses that people can't even access because of math. So,
talking to anybody at Public Health about that?
What's that?
Are you talking with anyone at Public Health?
Oh yes, yeah.
DHS?
So all we're talking with DHS. We're talking with our county DAs, and just all the moving parts and
Wow.
and what's involved. So that's one of the things that's going to be coming down the pipeline, as well as, right now our big focus is looking at housing, our zoning. There was a big controversial annexation on 150 Francis Street. For me, I felt, that's an older neighborhood, the infrastructure. So I was one of the three that we did not want to see it move forward yet. We had to look at some zoning and so it went ahead and passed, so it was annexed. But there are, as far as us within council, we're looking at zoning, especially in some of our older historical neighborhoods that really weren't designed for high density. So how do we navigate, all the pipes, everything underneath? And so, it's not really germane to library, but, we have old neighborhoods around. And we saw what happened with our own building and infrastructure. When build around it and we're not kind of taking care of the foundation underneath. So looking at that, yeah. There's a lot of different things happening all at once.
Questions, comments?
Just so you know, Catherine commented on thanking you for your work
Oh yes, of
with
course.
the drawings.
Okay, yeah, I know.
Great. Library profession news. I will share that Banned Books Week is coming up. It's the first week of October this year. And I'm saying this from memory, so I might be getting some of it wrong. It's the most challenges ALA has seen since they started tracking in 2001. And America also has an interesting list and stats out this year. There are top 13 from ALA views were 3 times. So you will probably be seeing displays and so on, but it's a week that every year the Office of Intellectual Freedom releases the challenges and bands from the previous years, and those are self-reported. And it's just libraries, bookstores, and so on usually often celebrate the right to read during that week. So it's October, whatever the first week of October is. I want to say the 2nd through the 7th, something like that.
Yeah, we'll be doing a display or displays collaboratively between children and adults
Oh, that's great.
to highlight that. So there's some activity going on and planning and that.
Let's see. Library board comments.
You know, I do have some books. These were discarded. Actually, the school district was going to throw them away. And there are some hardcover books in there. You know, we adopted a new curriculum. So these were books that I didn't quite make it out. The kids took off for the last day of school before I was able to hand them out. But there's some pretty nice books. I would be happy to donate them to the friends of the library if they wanted to add it to their book sale, or if anybody just wants to come and take their children, their picture books. So they're in good shape, very good shape. Yes, yeah, go through and grab some. So I have them right over here and I don't know if you want me to put them somewhere else.
I think what we could do is if on the way out anyone wants to look through them, if you feel up to it, if not, we'll bring them back into our admin area. And if you want to look and tonight's not the night, let me know. Otherwise, I'll take them to their friends. And
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Of course.
Any other library board comments? Okay, our next meeting is October 16th. Catherine, if my memory serves me right, you won't be able to join us on that one.
Yeah, I think our flight comes in too late. If I happen to be getting in earlier, I'll hop on the Zoom at least, but yeah, we are traveling that day.
Well, we will miss you then, but look forward to seeing everyone else, and we will adjourn at 9:01.